Golden retrievers, athletic, strong, capable of carrying heavy game over land and water, with a broad, powerful head, a strong neck, well-developed fore and hind quarters, smooth, powerful, ground-governing gait, able to retrieve and recover and bring back large loads undamaged because of its large but soft mouth. A disability assistance dog, a guide for the blind, a hearing dog for the deaf, hunting dog, detection dog, search and rescue participant. Golden retrievers, how much we have to learn from them. Strong, faithful, teachable, obedient, mission-minded, ready to go wherever the master sends it. Long-distance stamina. Can take whatever it's to retrieve without crushing it or hurting it. Gentle, harmless, and loving. I'm not suggesting that golden retrievers should be the first choice as a babysitter. But I think if anyone tried to harm that baby, that dog that's not typically a guard dog might just spring into action. Galatians chapter 6 ties in with our study in the love letters from John, which talks about loving our brother because we are our Father's children, and 2 Corinthians chapter 2, that we are to affirm our love for one that has sinned and then seeks to come back. Look at Galatians 6 again, as Bud read it a moment ago. It follows the statement that we walk by the Spirit, we live by the Spirit, we're filled with the Spirit, and we bear the fruit of the Spirit of God. Now, this passage opens, are you spiritual? Yes, you are. What's the proof? What's the mark? What identifies you as a person who possesses the Spirit of God? It's this. When a brother is caught in a trespass, he's gone where he shouldn't have done. He's snared. He's captured. He's stuck. You spring into action as a golden retriever, and you restore him in a spirit of gentleness and kindness. You look out for yourself lest you be tempted. You're not so focused on your own burdens that you can't bear someone else's load, and that's the way you fulfill the law of Christ. Look at the end of James, the last two verses, 5, 19, and 20. Brethren, if any one of you wanders from the truth and one turns him back, let him know that he who turns a sinner from the error of his way will save his soul from death and cover a multitude of sins. What greater privilege could we have than to help one who's drifting, one who's dropping back, one who's struggling, one who's not as active or attentive, doesn't participate like they once did. And you and I say that person can be reclaimed, can be renewed, can be refurbished, we could even say. Paul wrote to Timothy twice about the snare of the devil in chapter 3:9 and chapter 6:9. He wrote of his own passion to the Romans when he said, "These are my brothers. I could wish myself accursed for the sake of Christ, if that were possible that they might be redeemed," speaking of his Jewish kinsmen according to the flesh. In chapter 10:1, he said, "Brothers, my heart's desire, my prayer for them is for their salvation." Turn now to 2 Corinthians chapter 11. This is that description of Paul's afflictions, his hardships, these external, difficult, awful things that he endured. But after he's listed them, he says in verse 28, apart from such external things, there is the daily pressure on me of concern for all the churches. Look at 29. Who is weak without my being weak? Who is led into sin? Literally, who is caused to stumble without my intense concern? And I do not burn for him. Paul said there are all these things. Yeah, the dangers in the sea, and dangers in the city, and dangers from people. I've been stoned, I've been shipwrecked, I've been without food and without clothing. But set all that aside, there's something that just burns within me, and that is a child of God has fallen, has tripped, is stuck, is cornered, is captivated, and I can hardly stand it. I feel their weakness, their pain, their agony, their lostness. In all of these cases, we see the term brother. We're not talking about a ministry just for elders who shepherd and oversee the flock, or for ministers or others that may have a special role or designated, or deacons or teachers. But every spiritual person, that's what he says. Are you spiritual? Yes, you are. What is your aim? What drives you? Well, this idea that here's someone in a trap, and God has a key that could open it up, and he or she could be released. You and I will do whatever it takes. We will spend whatever it costs to get a loved one out of trouble. Even pets, when pets are missing, think about what those who treat their pets as so close to them will go to any lengths because of the relationship of love. That's what we're reading about here. The Lord's church, I want to ask you a question. Are you on the receiving end, or are you on the retrieving end? Sometimes people have a mindset, what has the church done for me? Nobody called me. No one visited me. No one sent me a card. What's the church doing for me? And we become like recipients. And we're just waiting, and we're sitting, and we're looking. We're on the receiving end. That's not altogether bad. Everyone needs that sometimes. You go through a loss or a heartache or a bereavement, or you're lonely, you lose your job or your house, something happens, and you want the church. That's what the retrievers do. But there's a time for all of us to say, hey, I will take the initiative, make the call, send the card, get on the encouragement team, step in. I will reach out and not wait with my arms folded for my phone to ring, because my phone dials out too. I have a car. I have internet. I have the opportunity and the time to do something for someone else. I think many times we find ourselves in between. We come to services, we attend. Maybe we're in a Bible class. We come and go. We don't really expect to receive a lot. We don't want to intrude on other people, broadcast our problems, wave a flag that says, hey, make me the focus of attention. We're not the receiving end, but we're not the retrieving end either. We just kind of do our thing. And in our culture where you sort of stay to yourself and you don't bother people and you don't want them to bother you, that can easily infiltrate the Lord's church. I thought of another song in addition to those beautiful hymns we sang today. Rescue the perishing, care for the dying, snatch them in pity from sin and the grave, weep o'er the erring one, lift up the fallen, tell them of Jesus, the mighty to save. We sang that. Though they're slighting him, still he's waiting the penitent child to receive. Plead with them earnestly, plead with them gently. He will forgive if they will believe. Down in the human heart, crushed by the tempter, feelings lie buried that grace can restore. Touched by a loving heart, that's you. Wakened by kindness, that's your kindness. Cords that were broken can vibrate once more. Rescue the perishing, duty demands it. Strength for your labor, the Lord will provide. Back to the narrow way, patiently win them. Tell the poor wanderer, a Savior has died. Rescue the perishing, care for the dying. Jesus is merciful, Jesus will save. Those words written by Fannie J. Crosby. If we were to look at Matthew 18, we'd find the whole chapter has to do with relationships in the kingdom. Who's the greatest? Well, it's the child or one like the child. Don't cause these little ones to stumble. And then in verse 12, what do you think? A man has 100 sheep, 99 are safe. One is wandering. What does he do? He leaves them. And he goes, and he goes, and he goes. He's a golden retriever. And he'll keep looking and hunting and detecting and reclaiming and saving and gathering that lamb, whatever it takes. And it may involve, starting in verse 15, confronting a brother's sin, showing him his fault privately just between the two of you, and then calling in others only as it becomes necessary for his own good, to win him back. And then starting at 21, to forgive and show mercy as we have received it from the one who canceled our debt. In all these cases, we might think of leaders in the church as having a particular responsibility. And yet, can't we see that this is something that Jesus has handed off, that he's given, that he's entrusted to all of us who care about people as he does, who can't stand to see the one that was saved become lost and drift away bit by bit. Cliff Young entered the multi-marathon from Sydney to Melbourne, Australia in 1983. He was scrawny. He was a potato farmer. He was a little bit older than the other contestants. It was going to take 6 or 7 days to run 544 miles. You know what he wore when he started the race? Rain boots and overalls. He didn't have the Nike shoes or the Adidas or the shorts or the equipment. The younger contestants laughed at him. What's he doing in the race? Those who were in charge of the competition were afraid this man's going to have a stroke or heart attack. In all of their training, they had been taught that you sleep at least 7 hours to be ready for the next day. No one told Cliff Young that. So while they were sleeping, even though he was slow and didn't have all the gear and equipment, he kept running and running and running. One day he slept 2 hours, and then he ran 23 hours straight. He wasn't the fastest, but he was the most persistent. He beat the next competitor by 2 days. And when they asked him, "How did you learn to do what you did?" This is what he said from Australia. He said, "I grew up on a farm with 2,000 sheep. And we had 2,000 acres of land. And we didn't have the money to get other tools and means of rounding up the sheep. And my job was to run back and forth across those 2,000 acres, keeping the sheep safe." That's it. That's the heart of God. That's what makes people run and seek and strive and retrieve and relieve and rescue. Because people, like sheep, are precious in the sight of God. And as much as we love the 99 or a congregation so precious, the shepherd has his eye on that one that's astray. I want to talk with us for a few minutes now about some things to recognize regarding those that may no longer be active with us. The first thing is that we can assume that when a person comes to be part of the congregation, he or she does so sincerely. They want to learn, they want to grow, they want to worship. They want to be part of the Christian way of life. But something in their lives changed, produced stress, became an issue or an obstacle for them. It may be sin, Galatians 6. If one of you is caught in a trespass, you step where you shouldn't, and now you're there. It could be work. In our age in which the boss requires hour after hour, and the schedule's not in the person's control, and even our young people are often drawn into that. It could be a moral failure, something in the marriage or with the children. It could be in their own family or between their family and another in the church. It could be members that have let them down or leaders that didn't do what they thought they ought to do. It could be a faith problem, but something has happened so that someone who came to us and was excited and on fire and eager to serve God, if we look up in 6 months or a year later, they're no longer present like they were. There is a reason for it. And others may not think it's valid, but to that person, it is. And step by step, maybe they no longer come at night or speak up in a Bible class. Maybe you see them less often, even on a Sunday morning. Maybe you notice something about their facial expression. Maybe they come late, leave early. Maybe they sit where they can be by themselves. And little by little, they may be sending out a cry for help. It may be silent. But people with the heart of the golden retriever are sensitive and mindful and aware. And so you're watching as a spiritual person for something that's not quite right, like it used to be. Where's the passion? Where's the zeal? Where's the smile that that person once had? And then, as they pull back, they wait. Will the church do anything? Who cares? And here, they need to be on the receiving end for the call and the visit and the card and the food, whatever it may be. And then, until the issue is addressed and resolved, they're going to stay away. And if you and I just fold up our hands and say, so sorry they're gone, I don't know what happened, but we sure hope they'll come back sometime. They know they're welcome. We're here. There's something in their heart or their life that's keeping them from doing that. And we won't know unless we go. We can guess. We can speculate. Wonder if this happened. What about maybe, I heard. And next thing you know, people are talking. But it's going that helps to discover the real pain. And the longer we wait, the harder it is for us to be able to assist and bring that person back. Time passes. What are they doing on the Lord's Day if they're not with us? They're doing something. Who are they with? They're with somebody. And before long, as the delay increases, they fill their schedule, their social needs, their concerns, and their desires. They try to meet in some other way. We'll learn more by listening to them than we will by talking to them. What they need first is not a lecture. And I say this as a preacher, it's not a sermon. What they need is someone to sit with them, put their arm around them, show them some attention, some compassion, some unselfish, generous interest. At first, people may offer excuses. Well, the reason I'm not as involved is, and they may put a little something out there that's true, but not the primary trouble. And depending on how we respond to that, they may go further or they may shut down. We're not going to fix it with one phone call or one card or one visit. We're going to need to invest and take the time and be patient so that we respond thoughtfully and deliberately. If we're defensive, if we're critical, that may shut them down. They may push back. They may feel like they can't really tell us what is on their hearts because we immediately jump to say, but, and then we think about ourselves and protecting who we are and what we're trying to do. If we respond to criticism with criticism, that may be the end of the conversation. But if we'll listen, if we'll ask, if we'll reach the pain source, not easy, challenging at times. It may be, first, not an elder or minister or someone in some designated capacity, but a caring member that decides to make the effort to show the love and the kindness. And then, of course, leaders at other levels will have their part to play. It will be an elder, it will be a minister, it will be a deacon and a teacher. It will be the pew patrol, the people sitting near that person, missing that person. And even if we don't succeed, which we may not, we will have given it our best and we can keep the door open. There are people that drift away that cannot be reclaimed. And you and I recognize that line of responsibility. There are certain things we can do and other things we can't do. And when we've done what we can, we have to leave the rest to God and to them. How do we prepare from the very beginning so that a person that comes to us will stay happy, growing, faithful, and strong? Learned about a pilot named Charlie Plumb, captain of the U.S. Navy, a graduate of Annapolis, served in Vietnam in the mid-1960s. He flew 75 missions from the aircraft carrier USS Kitty Hawk. One time, his plane was shot, and he parachuted out and came to land where he was captured. He was kept in the famous Hanoi Hilton there in Vietnam. Eventually, he was released, returned to private life. One day, he was eating at a restaurant, and a man came over to him and said, "You're Charlie Plumb. You flew jet fighters in Vietnam." And Plumb said, "That's right, I did. It was Fighter Squadron 114 on the Kitty Hawk. You were shot down. You parachuted into enemy hands. You spent 6 years as a prisoner of war." The pilot, Charlie Plumb, was taken back. He looked at the man, trying to identify him, but he couldn't. "How in the world did you know that?" The second man said, "I packed your parachute." I packed your parachute. And Plumb realized that if someone hadn't been thinking ahead about what could happen to a pilot if his plane was hit, and set something up that he could be spared and retrieved and eventually free again, he would have fallen to his death. And then it occurred to him that he didn't know this man's name. Had he ever passed him by and ignored him because I'm a pilot and he's just a lower classman? How do we pack each other's parachute? One thing we could do is when new brothers and sisters come to us or they're baptized into Christ, help them to buy in up front in terms of their involvement in worship and Bible study and ministry and outreach. These Bible classes we have are filled with powerful teaching from the Word of God and social interaction, recognition of newcomers and absentees and those with blessings and awards and challenges and difficulties and losses. And as we grow each one of these Bible class groups into fellowship, interaction, connecting, identifying, belonging, then we're packing the parachute so that that person is more likely to feel, I belong, this is good for me, my faith is stronger, I'm moving forward. And then if that person is absent from a Bible class, we'll recognize it quickly because the group is smaller in size. And through that class, as well as other means, we'll be able to respond quickly as golden retrievers. We can become retrievers ourselves. And in that way, we help to secure our own relationship with God. The other day, I noticed one of our newer members in the other part of the building, that foyer in the Family Life Center, studying the pictures of other members of the church, trying to figure out who's who and put a name with a face. And I thought, that man is a retriever. He's going to be with us and his wife as long as they're physically able. because they're looking beyond themselves to someone else they might be able to greet by name and get to know, perhaps go to visit. The encouragement teams do this kind of thing, and sometimes we'll be going to see someone that we don't know well. Well, how are we going to get to know them? Through a visit or a phone call or something that reaches them. Did you ever deal with Legos when your children were small? Remember the missing Lego that was always under the couch cushion? And the one that was always in place was the locked-in, tight, connected, surrounded caught. Galatians 6 talks about those caught in a trespass. You and I want to be caught in the church. We want to be so grounded, so rooted, so secure that God can then use us as golden retrievers for others. The Lord's Supper, as we talked about John 18, 1 through 6, and Jesus coming, being in control and yet surrendering himself. We saw him there as the ultimate retriever who could not bear to leave us lost in sin, astray off the path. And so we're here today because he came to rescue us from sin and death. Because of that, we offer his invitation. We spread his offer of retrieval to turn from sin, to get out of that trap, to be baptized into Christ and start life new. And then as brothers and sisters, because we are family, to be able to share our burdens and concerns and pray together. Won't you come? Let's stand and sing.